Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and the War Within expansion saw quite a transformation to the endgame content and progression. Normally when you reach max level, you got three options: raiding, dungeons, or PvP. But this time around, we also have the Delves, a new form of endgame progression that combines the experience of open world and exploration by presenting players with a new scenario and a story with every single time you enter a Delve. In a way, Delves are meant to be an extension of open world content, just a more instant structured form that allows players to progress through them and earn actual gear and upgrades, as well as other cosmetic rewards and even challenges players, allowing for plenty of class and skill expression in order to be able to unlock some of the most sought after, hard to get items. And as of last week, we saw that skill expression tested with a Zekvir Delve finally unlocked for the Season 1 content. For today's video, I wanted to focus on the Zekvir encounter, how to unlock it, and what to expect from the Zekvir fight, as it's actually quite a bit of a challenge, and it's meant to be one of the more challenging pieces of content available during the Season 1 of the War Within. As always, if you want to see more guide videos like these for the War Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. Otherwise, let's dive right into the depths of the Zekvir's Delve. So with the launch of Season 1 content officially as of last week, Zekvir Encounter is finally available, and this Zekvir Encounter is meant to be something very similar to some of the older expansions challenge content, similar to Challenge Mode Dungeons of Missa Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, or maybe even the fabled Mage Tower from the expansion of Legion, which was re-brought back over for the expansion of Shadowlands, and similar type of challenge content. Zekvir Encounter in the Delve is a single boss encounter with a number of mechanics and plenty of sweet rewards depending on the difficulty of the boss that you get to tackle, and also depending how many players are in your party when you defeat the boss, because the less players, the bigger the reward. So first things first, the Zekvir Vault comes in two difficulties: tier ? And tier ? I'll refer to them as tier 1 for tier ? and tier 2 for ? So to unlock the tier 1 difficulty version of Zekvir Encounter, you first need to complete a tier 8 Delves with lives left. They've recently changed how lives work and how deaths work towards, or rather against, your lives counter within Delves, like in group content and stuff. So it's technically a little bit harder to finish a Delve, like if you're not super experienced, or if you're in a party but you guys are dying a lot. You used to be able to res players without having to consume a life, but now just dying consumes a life, whether you have a res in your party or not. But as long as you can complete a Delve with lives left over on a tier 8 difficulty, then you unlock the tier 1 version of the Zekvir Encounter. To unlock the tier 2 or the double ? However, you'll need to complete a tier 10 Delve with all lives up, which is a little bit of a leg up. Beyond tier 8 Delves like tier 9, 10, and 11, you will start to encounter, I guess, the type of like lieutenant type of enemies of Zekvir, which are far more powerful than any of the normal enemies you'd find within a Delve, and all of them have unique mechanics, some of which are very annoying to deal with. The guy I kept getting a lot is the dude that's riding the big spider mount, and as long as he's riding the spider, you can't interrupt the main rider. So you have to focus down the spider, but there's a moment where the spider just dodges all damage, so you kind of have to cleave both of them evenly while trying to rotate your defenses in order to survive it. They're all kind of annoying to get through, and some players try to skip them if possible. They have been doing a bit of tuning though, but I guess what I'm trying to say is for tier 10 difficulty, you are going to notice a serious step up in terms of difficulty compared to a tier 8. Now, when you complete either one of those Delves, you'll be able to then access the Zekvir lair, which is actually right next to the City of Threads over to the side. So it's very accessible once you actually unlock it, and you could run the Zekvir's lair vault as much as you want to. There isn't a lockout or anything like that, so you can keep attempting the challenge as much as you want to. Now, for the actual mechanics of the Zekvir Encounter, there's a number of them. On the tier 1 difficulty, Zekvir starts out with 89 million health, and he'll gain access to a number of abilities, such as a Claw Smash, which is a frontal cone towards the player or brand, and he kind of just to pick his target sporadically, it seems. The further you away from the cone, the wider that cone is going to be, so keeping Zekvir in a decent position where you can dodge the cone easier, especially with some of the other mechanics involved, is going to be of utmost importance. That or having good mobility in order to escape that cone immediately. Another ability he's going to use is Angler's Web. It's a frontal linear attack that hooks anyone hit in that line. If Zekvir is channeling that ability, just make sure you're not in front of wherever he's facing. Otherwise, it may kill you, but it's definitely going to pull you towards Zekvir, doing a ton of damage. Enfeeble Spittle is a casted ability that has a very short cast, but it can be interrupted. If not interrupted, it leaves you with a damage of over time, or rather it leaves your entire party, you and Bran included if you're trying to do it solo, dealing quite a significant amount of damage unless you can dispel it, or if you have any abilities that allow you to remove a slowing effect, because if you remove the slowing effect, you can actually remove the infibulin spittle. So paladins with a Hand of Freedom might just want to Hand of Freedom Bran if you have the freedom that shares multiple targets. Horrendous Roar is an AoE fear with a short cast time. You can't interrupt it, all you can do is move out of the way. It also deals a significant bit of damage on some of the higher tier difficulties for Zekvir. His final ability is going to be called Web Terror, where he spawns in an ad inside of a web, and after a short time the ad breaks out of the web and starts attacking you. The ad is of the highest priority, and the best way to deal with it is to kill the web before the ad breaks out, killing the ad inside of the web. If the ad does break past the web, it has a cast called Web Blast that will stun everybody in the group that also needs to be interrupted. But if you're lacking for interrupts or you're trying to land your kicks on Zekvir, having an extra ad to interrupt just adds a little bit more complexity to the encounter. And that's going to be the entirety of the boss's tier 1 or tier ? Difficulty mechanics, and on its own it's a fairly challenging encounter with quite a few mechanics for you to watch out for, but it really becomes a step up more difficult in the tier 2 difficulty or in the tier ? difficulty. Though on tier 2 difficulty this fight gets a lot harder because the boss will have over 190 million of health, which is going to make the encounter a little bit longer, and everything he does is going to hit harder. He has essentially all of the same mechanics from the tier 1 difficulty, just everything hits a lot harder, and there's a lot more emphasis on interrupting and dodging all of the mechanics. But the boss now has also an additional casted heal that needs to be interrupted, so now there's 2 casted abilities that need to be kicked. If he gets the casted heal, he regains 10% of his total health. Another modification you'll notice in phase 1 of the encounter, yes there's phases, the Web Terror will have on solo difficulty 20 million HP, which takes much longer to take out, which means you have to commit some cooldowns that are on your trinkets or have decent enough gear in order to be able to take out that ad in a timely fashion. And at 60% health, the boss phases into his phase 2, which isn't all that difficult from phase 1. He gains the ability of Black Blood and he goes into Central Room to transition from phase 1 to phase 2, and during that time you can DPS the boss, so you'll want to make sure to time your mechanics and time the kill so you don't have an ad that you're trying to kill at the same time, just so you could have the boss phase and then are ready to attack him immediately. After phase 2, the boss gains one new ability called Unending Spines, which is just a dodge mechanic. You have to run around the boss trying to avoid the spines on the ground, and that's about all of the new mechanics that the boss is really going to get, but the rest of the encounter with all the other abilities is going to play out, plus that one additional mechanic. 2 abilities do get modified during phase 2. After this phase transition, however, like his heal effect becomes beefier, allow him to regain 25% of his health instead of 10%. Still, it's a high priority on interrupts though. And then the fear ability for his is now permanent. So if you do get hit by the fear, you're just going to be stuck in fear forever. But you should be dodging the fear in the first place because it also does a ton of damage and could even one-shot you if you don't have enough gear. Now, to help yourself prepare for this encounter, there's a couple of ways that you can customize Bran, and you're going to need Bran in order to be able to create yourself as much of an opportunity for success here. From what I've been able to see, majority of players run Bran for this fight as a damage dealer because it allows them a handful of abilities, primarily the ability of Interrupt. With his trusty whip, he's able to silence a cast of a spell, and since you have 2 spells, you gotta interrupt now, the actual spittle damage ability and a heal. If Bran can interrupt either one of these abilities, that'll be massive. You also need Bran in order to help you take care of some of the ads that the boss is going to spawn. Plus, most people end up running Bran just to kill the boss a little bit quicker, and the best curios that I've seen people run are going to be the combat curio Idol of Final Will, which allows Bran to designate you as a guide for his next shot within 4 seconds, where he'll be able to fire that shot to your location, dealing tremendous physical damage to the first 2 enemies hit, usually hitting the boss but also hitting the ad, which is necessary in order to be able to take that ad down quickly. In the relics and utility curio, I've seen a couple of different relics. Not a lot of them are good. Amorphous relic is something I've seen people run, though not nearly as much. With Amorphous relic, every time you get into combat, you either gain the buff of massive, increasing your size, max health, and damage, or miniature, decreasing your size, giving you more movement speed, which may make it easier for you to dodge mechanics, and increasing the haze by 12%. Though what I've seen a lot of players run is the Relic of Sentience because it allows Bran to use steel trap ability a lot more regularly, and if the boss does end up walking into steel traps, that does allow Bran to add additional damage. Those steel traps will not be able to slow down the boss in any way, shape, or form. It's also worth remembering as you're actually doing this challenge yourself, remember that this challenge is designed originally as an end game challenge. You are meant to be stomping over Zekvir early on. Well, tier 1 difficulty or tier question mark difficulty, it is meant to be able to do it right now as long as you have about 600 item level to your character. Though some players may find themselves a little bit behind if, let's say, you don't have the best of gear, then even tier 1 difficulty is going to give you a bit of a challenge, though it is very, very doable. And the current version of Bran and the current gear we have right now is actually scaled pretty well for the tier 1 from what I've been able to attempt. The tier 2, however, is meant to be completely part of that end game progression, where the fight is going to be difficult at first, but it's only going to get easier with gear, with Bran's levels, and as you get yourself best in slot items from a couple of weeks of the Great Vault. It's also worth adding that over the last few weeks, I have been tuning delves and tuning Bran quite a bit. For some reason, Bran would actually scale with the delve's difficulty, so the more difficult delve you go into, the harder Bran would hit. They did buff it back up by quite a considerable amount, but he doesn't seem to hit as hard as he used to. So I think that delve tier scaling actually might have benefited him much greater than anyone would have expected. So you may need to level up your Bran to get him back up to that tip-top shape before you can make some of the encounters like this fight in particular much easier. As for the rewards that you can get from Zekvir, we got ourselves the Nemesis achievement, where defeating Zekvir's lair on any difficulty before the release of the next season allows you to earn the achievement of Nemesis, but also a back piece and a toy. Toxic Victory will be the toy that allows you to emanate an aura of victory, which kind of just puts webs around your shoulders of your character. So it's kind of a unique cosmetic thing for you to rock as you're walking around, or maybe something to add towards your transmog if you want to do so. Speaking of transmogs, you also got a sweet back piece, which has this like Nerubian chitin cloak kind of look to it, or maybe even a shield potentially. It's hard to tell if it's meant to be a cloak or a shield. But it's one of the season 1 rewards that you can get from the delves, and there's going to be additional seasonal rewards as we get into future seasons. Then there's also 2 more hidden achievements that are available from feats of strength from the delves. One of them is Hunting the Hunter, which is to defeat Zekvir on the tier 2 difficulty, whether you're by yourself or in a party with other players, and partying up with others may actually be a little bit easier to do Zekvir than trying to do him solo. Though if you do end up defeating Zekvir as solo, there is an achievement called Let Me Solo Him, where if you were to defeat Zekvir by yourself on the tier 2 highest difficulty before the next season of delves, you earn a Delver's dirigible mount transformation of the Void, which transforms the Delver's mount into a Void version. This is a full-on transformation with all the knickknacks and doodads, so it's not something you can customize, but the entire look with that whole Void appearance can be yours if you defeat the boss on the hardest difficulty, which may require a little bit of practice and a ton more gear and preparation. And for delves, this is meant to be its own ultimate reward, an ultimate difficult content, very similar to the raids Mythic Final Boss difficulty, or even some of the higher tier Mythic Plus dungeons. But with that being said, that's going to be my guide for Zekvir. I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching it, and I hope all of you enjoyed. If you did enjoy this guide or find it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community to discuss Zekvir strategies with the rest of the community. Also, let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments of this video. What do you think about the fight? What do you think about the scaling? And do you agree with the Bran nerf, I guess, that they did with the scaling and stuff? Or do you think maybe they should have kept Bran there as is? And let me know all your thoughts about the delves in general. Are you playing them? Are you enjoying them? And are you invested in this type of endgame like you would be with Mythic Plus or with raiding? Or what would you want to see more for delves in the future? Let me know all that in the comments down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.